Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Welcome to Diplomat's Desk. I am your host Meet Shah. Usually headlines focuses on the power struggle between the US, China and Russia, but quietly another force is shaping in this century which is India. Not through confrontation but through connectivity, technology and trust. Today we will trace India's new global footprint across 7 regions on world map to see how diplomacy, business, defense, and innovations are quietly rewiring the world. Let's start with the Gulf, India's fastest rising zone of influence. In 2022, India signed the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with the UAE. 2 years later, bilateral trade crossed $100 billion, dollars, up nearly 40% since 2021. Almost 97% of Indian goods now enter duty free, everything from jewelry to machinery. But the real revolution is digital. UPI payments, India's instant pay systems are now accepted across the UAE, letting Indian travelers and exporters pay directly in rupees. Now aid Saudi Arabia. India is its fourth largest trading partners, $42 billion dollars in 2024-25, and the two have upgraded ties through the Strategic Partnership Council. Saudi funds are investing in Indian renewables and manufacturing, while both nations co-develop green hydrogen projects. Together, the UAE and the Saudi Arabia anchor India's West Asian corridor, a trade and energy highway that eventually links to Europe. This is India's economic diplomacy in action: trade plus tech plus trust, replacing the old oil-only relationship. Now let's talk about the Indo-Pacific age, Philippines and Vietnam. In Southeast Asia, India is becoming a defense exporter. The Philippines received its first BrahMos supersonic missile batteries, part of a $375 million deal. Range 290 kilometers, speed Mach 3, deployment, coastal defense against incursions. Vietnam is next, negotiating its own BrahMos purchase and renewing offshore energy projects with India's ONGC. Together, they extend India's deterrence arc across the South China Sea and make New Delhi a trusted security partner for ASEAN. With France, India's cooperation has moved from procurement to partnership. The 2025 deal for 26 Rafale M naval fighters worth $7.4 billion dollars and new Scorpion submarines make India one of only 4 navies worldwide with 4.5 generation carrier jets. These programs bring French technology and jobs to India, not just hardware. They also pull Europe into the Indo-Pacific security network, balancing China's maritime reach. Now let's talk about the North Corridor, Iran and Central Asia. The Chabahar Port in Iran is India's strategic gateway to Central Asia. In 2024, India signed a 10-year agreement to operate the port. Cargo volume grow over 60% in a year. Why it matters is it gives India land access to Afghanistan and Central Asia without Pakistan. It links to the international north-south transport corridor, cutting shipping time to Europe by 40%. It offers a counterweight to China's Gwadar port under the BRI. Even Afghanistan has urged India to scale up RISE, a sign of how regional economies depend on it. Now let's talk about the tech triangle between the US, Japan and Australia. In the technology realm, India is teaming up with the US, Japan and Australia, forming a democratic innovation triangle. With the US, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology (ICET) targets $500 billion dollars in bilateral trade by 2030. Projects include co-producing F414 jet engines for India's Tejas Mk2 fighters and Micron's semiconductor plant in Gujarat, expected to begin output in 2026. Japan is supporting India's semiconductor roadmap through Rapidus and Renesas, while Australia supplies lithium and cobalt for EV batteries and electronics. Together, they are building a resilient tech supply chain independent of China. For India, that means high-tech jobs and strategic self-reliance. Now let's talk about the global south anchor, South Africa and Africa. India's footprint in Africa, especially in South Africa, is expanding fast. Bilateral trade tops $17 billion, dollars, part of India-Africa commerce worth over $80 billion dollars overall. In 2025, the countries signed defense agreements on naval technology and submarine training. Through BRICS, they promote local currency settlements to reduce dollar dependence. Indian firms like TCS and Mahindra are building hubs in Johannesburg and Durban, while India invests in South Africa's green hydrogen and solar projects. By 2050, Africa will represent 25% of the global workforce. India's training and digital finance partnerships to ensure it helps shape that growth and shares in it. So, what does this all add up to? First, diversified supply chains. India's $100 billion trade with the UAE now rivals its entire commerce with Germany or France, showing a shift in economic gravity to the east. Second, strategic autonomy. Defense deal with France and exports to the Philippines let India balance tie with US, EU, and Russia on its own terms. Global South leadership. Partnerships with Africa and BRICS give India a platform to represent developing economics in G20 and United Nations reform talks. Fourth, technology leapfrog. Chips, engines, minerals. India is climbing the value chain from outsourced coding to core manufacturing. Fifth, energy transitions. Saudi oil, UAE solar, African hydrogen. India is securing supplies for the next industrial cycle. The ripple effects touch every major economy. The US and European Union must court India for new markets. China faces a peer competitor and Africa gains a reliable partner. So India's rise is not allowed, but it's strategic. From digital payments in Dubai to missiles in Manila, from ports in Iraq to tech plants in Gujarat, and green energy in Johannesburg, each partnership builds credibility, capability, and influence. The world is not just watching India anymore; it's working with India, and increasingly because of India. If you like a deep dive on the Indian Middle East Europe corridor, tell me in the comments, like, share, and subscribe for more strategic explainer on how India is reshaping the world order. Thank you. See you in the next one.